All right, everybody, here we go. We are going to look at the first update patch to NESmaker. If you have been using 3.1.0, you need to download the newest version, which is 3.1.1. Download the newest version. And if you're seeing a number that's higher than that, that means you're in the future at some point, and there's probably newer tutorials than this. Now, most of the functionality, almost all the functionality, is the same in 3.1.1 as it was in 3.1.0. However, there are a few differences, and there's a lot of fixes to the engine itself, the actual ASM engine underneath. There's some new features. And there's a few tweaks that didn't exist in the tool that do now that you would need to if you were going to make your old save states work. You need to run them through this. I suggest start from scratch. I'm going to start from scratch with you. I'm going to go blazingly fast through all this nonsense. In fact, I'm going to try and catch up to where we were in about 20 minutes with most of the functionality, so you can kind of get a refresher. I recommend going straight from scratch and building from scratch. And if you can't remember how to do something specific, look at the old tutorials to do that thing. And I'll really focus on the new stuff that's here. Okay. I'm going to be doing a whole new set of tutorials probably before the Memorial Day beta, which will include all the new stuff and all the updates and kind of go step by step. But for right now, just stick with me. Do, look at this as sort of an appendage to the other tutorials, not a new tutorial. All the stuff that you already learned how to do, I'm expecting you to still have retained. So let's open up NESmaker 3.1.1. It should still work with your activation code. Again, I would recommend making a duplicate of 3.1.1 folder so you have a blank one in case you screw up or you want to try again or whatever, and you're working with the copy. I would go to project, set the project labels, set your emulator. So first of all, navigate to FCEUX, which for me is in desktop and is in NES stuff. And I don't know where you put yours, so I can't speak intelligently to that. And then you have to navigate to your save state. So that's for me in here and inside game engine data, and it's a file called game. And so now it'll run in FCEUX when I compile it. Okay, I'm going to make some palettes. I'm not even going to make a dummy palette. I'm going to make a palette group called main pals or something. Pals? Male pals? No. How about main pals? And then I'm going to make this palette call this palette grassland. And I'm going to right click on grassland and assign it to main pals. And you can see there it is right there. And now I'm going to start making some graphic assets. So I'm going to go to Graphics Bank 1 and go to Assets. And you're not going to see anything here, obviously, because everything's gray. My grassland palette doesn't really have any colors. They're all the same. So I'm not going to notice any graphics in my tile set. So I'm going to make the first color black, and you should start to see a silhouette if you have graphics. Now, if you have an all black thing, if you have a brand new tile set, obviously you won't have anything drawn there, and you have to create some tiles. These are pulled over from the beta. So how I lay out my colors is I like the last color in the group to be the ground color, and then I go highlight, shadow, or feature color. So that's how I got my tree. Now you guys can do this any way you want, but for instance, to do a stone sub palette, I might do something like this: grass color, and then light color, gray, highlight color, shadow color, and then I get like stone like that. All right, so I'm going to go back to the first sub palette here. I'm going to choose walkable. I'm going to pick that first tile, the ground tile. I'm going to call it ground, save new. Next, I'm going to make a 2x2 tile. And this is where some of you guys messed up before. And I want to make sure to really stress this. Do not click on these bits. Do not click on solid or ignore pathing. Don't do it. They don't do anything. What they're going to do is add extra information to your collision that doesn't exist anymore in the current version of the engine. And that's why some of you guys had weird results when you used these. Games crashed, or players turned into a bunch of weird graphics, or all kinds of unexpected results. If you want to make something solid, use the solid collision type like this. So we're going to set all those tiles to solid, and we're going to call this tree. That's all we're going to do for now. We've got a ground and a tree. I can go to overworld, pick a screen. I'm going to randomly choose this one. Put my player in that screen, right click place player, and put some trees in there. Maybe I'll have them come down like this. And then around the corners here. I don't know. I don't want to spend a lot of time on anything that I'm doing right now. So there we go. I've got a little screen here. I need to make a player though. So I'm going to come down to game objects. And remember the difference between game objects and monsters. Game objects are generally the objects that are going to stay on the screen from screen to screen, other than monsters that change out from screen to screen. So every screen's gonna have a different set of monsters, but you're always gonna have like the collectible, your power up, the mushroom that you get is always gonna be in the game, and it could show up anywhere in the game. So we'd probably make it a game object. Your player, your weapons, that kind of thing. They're probably game objects. And that's my son screaming in the background. What a glorious sound. He wants to contribute his 2 cents to this video. I'm going to click on player. I'm going to make a really rudimentary player. I'm not even going to give him any animations. I'm just going to give him movement. And there is some new things here that I need you to pay attention to. So I'm going to make a player palette, rename it. And I'm going to match this guy. So blue is his hair. So I'm going to give him brown hair. I'm going to give him a skin toned face. That one, and a blue shirt. All right. And I'm going to make this look like my player. And that's it. I'm not going to add any animation. You feel free to add animation. If you need to remember how to add animation, go back to the tutorials. For right now, though, I do need to go to Object. I'm going to hit Save, so it updates my graphic over here in the list. I'm going to Object Details. This is how you'd set your animation states. Details. Okay. There is something new here that's very important if your collisions are going to behave properly with other objects. And it's this section right here. Basically, we're telling the object, what team are you on, dude? This is on the player team. So it is a player. So I need to make sure I click player. The other thing is it's persistent. This is the only object in the game that you should make persistent at this point. Okay. We're going to make a bunch of objects. This is the only one. What is persistent? So this is a pretty common term across game engines, and persistence means that like when I load a set of new data, like when I go from this screen to the next screen, all of my objects are resetting. Like all the monsters are changing. Like if there was any coins on the level and I go to the next screen, the coins aren't in the same place on the next screen unless I set them there, but they're not carrying over from one screen to the other. But the player is supposed to carry over. He's supposed to maintain all his hit points, all his experience points, like whatever. Right. So we want him to be persistent. What was happening, and some of you guys experienced this and we fixed it, and this is our method of fixing it. Some of you guys noticed that you went to a new screen and your player disappeared, or all of a sudden you were controlling a bad guy and you're like, hey, now hold on a second. What's going on with that? The reason that was happening was because, if you put monsters on your first screen and they loaded before your player loaded, they became object 0, and we were only counting for object 0. So we were keeping object 0 always persistent. But if your player wasn't object 0 and it went to the next screen, then it would keep whatever object was object 0. Like if it was a bad guy or if it was no object at all, that's the one that would end up being persistent. So we fixed that, and this is our method for doing that. So make sure that for a player, you click player and you click persistent. We also need to give your player a speed. I'm going to give him a speed of like 36 or so, and medium acceleration speed for him. Actions, I'm not going to set anything. Don't forget how we had it set up was we said that if he was standing still, he was using action step 0. If he was moving, he was using action step 1. And all that did was handle the animation. Well, we're not using animation. So for this player right now in my tutorial, so you do what you will with that for yours, but I'm going to quickly go through this. Other thing that we fixed, bounding boxes. Okay. Some people, if you made a really narrow bounding box, you had trouble. And when you went from left to right, it would get stuck between two screens and it would just flicker back and forth and get stuck. That problem should be fixed. Let me know if you notice that it's not with whatever you try. Okay, I've got a bounding box on my player now. This player is pretty much ready to go, except I need to do a couple more things. I'm never going to get to the point of him actually being created because I'm going to get stuck on my start screen right now. I was going to load up my start screen, and this is what it looks like. I haven't loaded any palettes or any graphics. I'm not going to bother loading graphics. I'm just going to make a black start screen. This is just for testing. But I do need to load some code. I need to go to user scripts, start button, start screen, and I want to load all my movement scripts. Okay. So what I need to tell it to do is in my input editor, in my start screen, when I press the start button, and don't worry about target. It really doesn't matter what you put here right now. This and this and this are not used right now. When I press start in the start screen, it's going to run start button, start screen, add script, bam. It's also going to do a bunch of stuff in the game. If I'm in the main game state and I press right, I'm going to use the press right script. If I press down, I'm going to use the press down script. If I press left, I'm going to use the press left script. If I press up, I'm going to use the press up script. Now, if I release left, or release right, I'm going to use the release right script. If I release down, I'm going to use the release down script. If I release left, I'm going to release left script. And if I release up, I'm going to use the release up script. And if you want to remember what any of those do, don't forget that you can go into code scripts and you can pull it up and you can see this is the press down script. This is the release right script. I can make changes. I can save it. If you really know what you're doing and want these things to do different things and you start to dig into the ASM, easy way for you to start updating these scripts. But now I should be able to move around and it should observe my collision detection with the background. So let's check this out. Awesome. So now I got my player. Now don't forget, I didn't set up any animation for him. I did not, I didn't make him change states. I didn't make him change direction. I just made it so he moved around. If you follow the other tutorials, you'll get him moving. And you can see, I don't really like the way that works with his hair. Notice the palettes, he like disappears in that tree. So I'd probably make his hair a darker color or the tree a darker color or whatever. But right now, I want to get caught up to where we were. So let's make some monsters, right? Let's go to monster graphics banks and let's load a monster. Okay, this is the default monster that I'm going to give him his own palette. I'm going to call it MonPal. And I'm going to make this 2x2 and I'm going to make a really simple monster too. I'm just going to make, let's see, I usually like to keep his skin red, eyes and mouth white, and his outline dark blue like that. And I'm going to make them really simple. I'm going to make them 2 frames. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the first frame and I'm going to go to the second frame and I'm going to paste it in. That's all I'm going to do. And I'm going to flip it. So now he's, his legs are going to move just to give him a little bit of animation. And I'm going to call him Bug. Now this is something that's kind of important and I didn't really go through this last time. Make sure you're your monsters. So I quickly made a monster. I gave him a name. I'm going to hit save. And what you'll notice is now he exists. Do you still see how the save button's still here? If I saved again, I would create a copy of Bug and another copy of Bug. And we did this on purpose for quick prototyping of different monsters based on the same graphics. So we didn't have to keep, making duplicates and things like that. But it does mean that if I have it does mean that right now I'm working on essentially a new monster. When I hit save, it's making a new monster and none of these changes are being saved with this monster. Okay. All I really mean to say is once you save it, click on it again and it reloads it. Okay. And you'll notice the save button has disappeared. Now it knows I'm editing this specific monster. I'm not trying to make a new one. And so all the changes that I make are automatically saving to this monster. Okay. So let's look in the object details. I didn't do anything with animation states. I do need to set the object type, the object flag here to monster, which is different than setting it to player. He's not persistent. He's a monster. And I'm going to give him a speed, an acceleration. I also need to make sure I give him a edge and solid action. I'm just going to make him change, reverse his direction. His actions, all he's going to do for right now is he's going to start moving in 8 directions. This is another thing that was fixed. The timer was acting really weird because I had the wrong number of bit shifts, which is basically division and multiplication. And any odd numbered timer that wasn't reading the last bit, it was doing all kinds of funny things. So now it's working. If I put 0, it's going to give me a random number. If I put 1, it's going to give me a really quick change. If I put it's going to be a little bit slower timer, 3 a little bit slower, all the way to 15. So I'm going to make this just to demonstrate the concept. I'm going to make him change direction really fast. So he's going to move in any direction. And then after that really quick timer goes off, he's going to repeat his action. So he's, he's just going to move, change direction constantly. Let me give him an animation speed. That's going to be really obnoxious how fast he's moving. But I'm going to give him a bounding box similar to the players. Like that. I'm going to hit close. And now that I've got this monster, I'm going to make a monster group with him. Bug, 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 bug. I'm going to call this bugs group. Save it. Go to overworld. Go to my screen. Screen info. Day monsters. And I'm going to get the bugs group. I'm going to make sure that it's using the proper monster palette. Hit OK. And now these are the monsters I've loaded. I can put them wherever I want. And they should behave as expected and be moving around. Now, I haven't set up, we do have the code for what happens when I die, but we haven't set it up yet. We'll revisit that in a second. Right now, we're going to notice something really weird happens. If I walk into them, I just turn into the top left corner of my head. Some of you guys experienced something like this. What happened? I don't get it. I don't get what happened there. Okay, so let's talk about what just happened there. We made a code. We have a code right now in routines, system, handle player death. Handle player death. This one right here. And what this says is, hey, when you run into the player, first of all, get rid of me. It's going to get rid of the player. The player is not going to be there anymore. Instead, it's going to create at the player's position. This is saying store the player's position, his coordinates in a temp and temp 1. His X, his Y, the player's position. It's going to create object 8. Which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Effect 0. It's going to create that object at action step 0. And then it's going to destroy the player. So it's replacing the player with what's in 8. Well, we don't have that yet. In fact, if I look at object 8, guess what it looks like? The top left corner of the player's head, which is why that's what appeared. It did exactly what we were telling it to do in code, but that's just not the effect we want to have. All right, so I want to use a different sub palette for my little explosion here. I can set it here, and I'm going to want to set it here. I'm going to make a new palette. I'm going to call it game object pal, and I'll rename it. The problem, though, is that no matter what I put here, this isn't what's controlling what the player object and the game object are. You have to go back to your player, and you have to tell it that the second sub palette is, not monster, I'm sorry, is the game object palette. These two are going to be loaded in the first two sub palette slots, no matter what you put in the rest of these game objects. Just like in the monster objects, you can put whatever you want over here, and it's the screen that's determining what palettes are loaded. It'll become more intuitive as you play with it, but right now, just know that all this is telling it to do is use the second sub palette when it's creating something, and this says use the first sub palette when it's creating something. This is what's actually determining what sub palettes the game is loading in player. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a 2x2 object using this, and you know what? I want this to be like a yellowish sort of explosion. Could make it bloody if I wanted to. I'm going to show you a quick trick for one of these symmetrical objects like this. I want to make this a full 8 frames. And the last 4 are just going to be blank. So it's going to like explode and go away for a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this first frame and paste it to the second frame, because notice it observed my flips. So as I go through, the flips are being observed, and all I have to do is replace the tile. I don't have to worry about doing the flips again. I'm going to frame 3, paste. I'm going to use the third frame here. And again, the flips are staying regardless of me putting in a new tile, which just saves me, oops, I forgot to paste, which just saves me a little bit of time. And then from there on out, it should be blank. And I'll use this guy for blank. Make sure it's a tile that you're going to leave blank in your tile set if you're going to use that trick right there. Paste it, paste it, paste it. Okay. So now I'm going to name this effect. I'm going to name this player death explosion or something. Save it. And now you can see it's updated over here. And I'm going to go into object details. And I don't have any animations. This doesn't have a type. I don't need to set a type. It doesn't really collide with anything. It's an effect. So I would probably put ignore all object collisions, but that doesn't actually do anything right now. So I don't have to worry about it. Don't have to worry about speed or reaction types. The only thing I have to worry about is I have to make sure I give it an animation speed or else it'll never animate. And when the animation is done, it's going to restart the game. That's our game over, right? That's how our game over routine is working. Bounding box, close. Now, if I run into the monster, I'll explode and the game will restart. Perfect. That's what I want. All right. So honestly, now we are pretty much caught up with what we wanted to do, what we did, the main functionality of the last tutorial set. But now we're going to get into the new stuff. So this is the stuff that we're really looking at this tutorial for. All that stuff was catch up. All that stuff was stuff you should have already known. And if you don't already know, go back and do those first tutorials, etc. But we are now going to get into new stuff. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make new types of monsters that do various things. So I'm going to go into my bug, and instead of just moving around now, I want him to do something else. I'm going to go to object details, and I'm going to go to his actions. And instead of just moving in 4 directions, just repeating that action, I'm going to have it advance his action. And I'm going to make that a little bit longer too. So he's going to move in a random direction. Then he's going to go to this action. What's this action? Right now it's nothing. I'm going to make it stop moving. So he's actually going to stop in place and wait a second. And he's going to advance his action. After he's done waiting a second, he's going to shoot straight. So whatever direction he was just moving in, he's going to shoot forward from that direction. And when he's done with that, I'll make that real quick. When he's done with that, he's going to go back to his first step. So here he's going to move in a random direction and then stop moving and then shoot in that direction he was moving and then start moving in a different random direction. And he's going to stop animating. He's going to stop animating and then he's going to start animating again. That's what the speed's doing. So what is happening with the shoot script? Let's take a look. If I come over here and I look at my AI action 4, which is the file, which if I count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, shoot straight. So if I look at my AI action number 4, it's doing almost the same thing that the player death does. It's getting the position of the object calling this script, which in this case is the bug monster. And then it's creating an object at that position. What object is it creating? Object number 2. Remember in the death script, it created object 8. Here, it's creating object 2. Well, what's object 2? 0, 1, 2. Well, nothing. We haven't set it up yet. It's this object right here, though. So let's set this object up. Guess what would happen right now if you had this object shoot? It would just create this left side of his head. That's what would show up. That's not what we want, obviously, and we don't want to call it projectile source head either. This is like monster projectile. That's what this object's going to be, and it's going to look like this thing, and it's probably going to use the second sub palette. Whatever's set in that second sub palette. So let's do that. And we're going to go to object details. I could animate it, do all kinds of things, but in object details, I'm going to give it a speed, pretty fast speed, and I'm launch it. So it's not going to accelerate. If you wanted it to like slowly accelerate like a missile or something, you could set the acceleration speed low. I'm going to set it high so it just shoots. And this is a monster weapon. So the monster weapon is also going to do certain things when it runs into the player or when it runs into the edges of the screen or things like that. We're going to set that to destroy me. So this object, when it hits the solid object, is going to go away, or when it hits the edge, it's going to go away so it doesn't loop back to the other side and keep going, And then actions, if we had animation, we'd give it an animation speed. If we had other things, but it's not doing anything, so we don't have to worry about this. And we'll give it a bounding box. Now your monster is going to shoot in the direction that he's facing. So let's just take a look at that. You saw how quick I was able to change this monster's behavior. And the monster's going to shoot. And you notice they shoot in the direction that they're facing. Awesome. So that's cool. But what if I want an object that like shoots, at you? Instead of just doing something with this, I'm going to duplicate this guy. I'm going to make like a stone object. All right. So I'm going to call this bug stone, and I'm going to make it use this second subpalette, and I'm going to actually make a new subpalette for it called Monstone, rename it. And with this guy, it's going to be a stone looking palette. So this is going to be like the darker color gray. And this is going to be like a lighter color gray. And this would be like blue, or yeah, like a shadow color. Okay, so there we go. So it's like a stone statue version of this guy. And frame 2, it's like a stone statue version of this guy. But you know what? He's going to be standing still. So this object, I'm going to make completely standing still. I'm not going to have him having any animation. So I got him down to 1 frame. He's just standing still because he's going to be a statue. And I'm going to get into object details. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to get rid of. He's not going to move at all. I'm going to make him so he's not even a monster. And I'm going to show you why we're going to do that in a little while. He's not even a monster, which means I won't be able to attack him when I can attack. He's my bullets are just going to go right through him because he's not actually a monster. There isn't that collision, and that's what checking these does. So he's not. He could reverse direction. It's not going to much matter. Animation speed. He's not animating, so this isn't going to do anything. And he's also when he's not going to move at all, so he's going to have a null, but he is going to advance. Let's give him a random timer instead. And when he advances, instead of stop moving, because he was never moving, he's going to shoot at player. And instead of advance, he's going to go to first. So he's just going to cycle between these 2 actions now, and he's going to shoot at the player. Well, what does shoot at player do? So let's take a look. That's action number 5, right? If I look, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's take a look at action number 5. Starts off pretty much the same. It finds the position, it creates an object of the position, even creates the same object. And now this is where you can get creative. If you want, you can have it create a different object and have that object do different things. You could just get into AI Action 5 and change this number. What object do you want it to create? And I'm going to give you a hint. These are in hex. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0A, 0B, 0C, 0D, 0E, 0F. All right. So it's not 10, 11, 12. It's 0A through 0F. So important to note, but you could actually tell it that I wanted to create a different number of object here. Instead, what we did was, just to show how this works, we have it creating the same object, but a different action step. So this determines what action steps being created. If I look at object 2 and oops, I go to object details, go to actions, we are creating it using this action step. Now, this is going to be super important, and this is why you might want to make a totally separate object out of it. You don't have to make it at object action step 1. You can make it, but like if I wanted the animation faster on step 1 than it is on step 0 or something like that, I can give different projectiles, different looks and different feels and that kind of thing. What I'm going to do for this object, I could also give it different animations and different graphics. What I'm going to do for this particular animation is I'm going to use this bit. Now, it says invincible, but that doesn't mean anything anymore because that was for Mystic Searches, and no longer do we use that bit for invincible. So I'm going to go to project labels, and I'm going to change that to what it really means. I'm going to go to monster action step flags. And where it says invincible, forget that. This should say ignore physics. This is going to ignore the main physics engine and use an alternative physics, which basically uses trigonometry to move this towards the player. So in monster projectile, object details, now you'll see it says ignore physics. So it's creating it in action step 1. Action step 1 needs to ignore physics. Action step 0 shouldn't, because that was the main object. One of the other problems and why you might want to make this its own object instead of the same object, if you want both objects that shoot forward and objects that shoot at you, okay, speed works different. So for this alternative physics engine, each number increases the speed notably. So 0 is actually moving, but kind of slow. 1 is twice as fast. 2 is twice that fast. 3 is twice that fast. 4 is twice that fast. So I'm going to leave it at 4 right now. All right. So the reason you might want to make a separate game object for the bullet that shoots at you and change the script just a little bit, change this number to whatever is going to be the shooting at you, is so that way you can preserve the speed of the object that they shoot forward, but also do this other alternative physics engine for the speed of the projectile that shoots directly at you, that aims at you. Okay, so now I need to put this stone bug into a group. And I'm going to go and I'll call it bugs stone. Whoops. And in my overworld, I'm going to change the objects to bug stone, and I'm going to change their palette to, did they use a second? They use a second palette. My bad. They use the second sub palette. And now I got these stone monsters that will shoot directly at me. And man, this is super fun. It makes it so much more fun to play when you have monsters that feel like they're interacting with the object, like this all of a sudden will make it feel like, right? So now these objects are shooting at me. It feels a lot more like, it feels like the statues in Zelda, you know, bosses would shoot at you. It keeps you moving. It keeps things interesting. This is actually clipping against that tree, even though it looks like it'd be missing. So I might want to make the bounding box even smaller. See that? But anyway, you get the idea. So now I have a monster that shoots at you, and I could make a moving monster that shoots at you. I could make a object like the boss monster that shoots at you. I could make it not even look like a monster and make it look like turrets that are shooting at you. You know, I can make it an invisible monster that's just showing through to the background that you could place somewhere that's shooting at you. So it looks like the background tile is the thing that's shooting. Like, there are so many cool tricks that you could do just with that alone, but we're not done yet. So let me show you what other things we've added that will benefit you using these different monster types. One of them, I'm going to put those other monsters back on the screen first before I do anything. I'm going to put the bugs group and put their sub palette back on. Awesome. And I'm going to make a new graphic asset. I'm going to use this, and I'm going to use that gray palette that I set up, and I'm going to call this monster lock. And I'm going to use all monster lock. This does something that, you know, is a very common game thing to do. Basically, when I put this in the room, all my monsters are gone, this should go away. But how do I kill the monsters? I don't have any way to kill them yet. So that's no fun, but let's test this out anyway. I should walk against that solid object, and I shouldn't be able to get past it. And that's just going to break my heart. It's, you know, I feel like I should be able to get past this, and I can't. Oh, and I've got to put those monsters back on. I got to put that projectile. That's what happens because they're right now using the other physics engine, and their speed is too slow. That's why I said you might want to make a separate object for the things that aim at you, right? So let's try that again. So now I'm stuck against the wall there. Okay. I want to fight back, man. You know, I want to fight back. So I actually have a new script that you guys can use, and it's in user scripts, and it's called Create Simple Projectile with Motion. Let's take a look at it real quick, and it should look pretty familiar. It's getting the player's position, and it's creating an object. I mean, at this point, you're starting to figure out how a lot of this stuff works. Hopefully, it's creating object number 1, 0, 1. Well, I don't have anything there. So what would it create? You'd shoot your own head. And in fact, it wouldn't move anywhere. It would just show up on the screen right now. I want to shoot this little tiny projectile, and I'm going to use the game object palette. So I'll use the second palette, and I could animate it. I could do all kinds of things. I'm going to call this player projectile so I can remember. I'm going to go into object details. In object details, I need to make this a player weapon. Player weapon is a type that will destroy monsters when it runs into them. So I need to give it a speed fairly fast with full on acceleration, unless you want it to like be like a missile, and then you give it like slow animation, like it's got a, you know, like a rocket. And And when it hits the edge of the screen, it's going to get destroyed. And when it hits an object, it's going to get destroyed. A solid object, I mean. And then I could animate it if I wanted to. It's not going to ignore physics because it's just using the old physics engine. It's going to see the direction I'm moving, move the same direction with a faster speed. But I do want to give it a bounding box. And now I've got a bullet that I can fire. So now I just need to tell it when I want to call that script. I'm going to save it so that way it updates over here. Go to input editor. When do I want it to fire? Well, in my main game, when I'm pressing the B button, I'm going to run the create simple projects with motion script. And now when I play, and the physics are already there, the collision detection is already there. That's what checking those bits, monster or player weapon. That's what all those did. So monster projectile hits me, I die. When I hit the monster dies. All right. So, and now when I hit that last monster, oh, look at that. It went away. That's so cool. So now you can see how that's going to completely revolutionize your ability to make screens and the cool things that you can do on them, right? You have to beat all the monsters to get Pat to the next level. You have to beat all the monster, you have to beat the boss to get to the goal. And like, it feels much more game-like already just with that one simple thing added. But there's one issue, and we're going to talk about how to fix it. One of the ways that you can fix it, blank screen. Go back. Oh, it's there again. Crap. And now I'm stuck on the other side of the thing. Now you could use that to your advantage, right? You can definitely use that to your advantage where you want the player to get stuck over there and have to find their way back through the maze to open that up again or, whatever. But we have a couple of ways that we can get around it. I'm going to show you one of them right now. Let me make a gold sort of wall here. And I'm going to use this one that looks like a lock. And I'm going to use this all pickups lock, and I'm going to call this pickup lock. Save it. And I'm going to make a new screen real quick on the next screen. On this screen right here, I just pressed the up button, and I'm going to make a new screen right here. And all I'm going to do is something like this. I'm going to put that right here. So what this object does, I can even put two of them here if I want. What this object does is it looks for, if I go to any of my objects, it looks for objects with the pickup type. If there are none, it's going to go away. All right. So what I want to do is I want to make an object that I have to collect in order to open that door. And I'll give you a perfect example. It might be a key, right? So I made a key. I went to Monster Graphics Bank. I'm going to make a quote unquote monster that's a key. I'm actually going to make a new palette, and I'm going to call it key and rename it. And let's see, the blue should be like the gold, and I kind of like the red, but I think it'll look better as like a rusty key. There you go. And I'm going to call this key. And I'm going to save it. And in my object details, I'm going to need to tell it. I don't really need to set anything except for a bounding box and the fact that it's a pickup type. The pickup type does a couple of things. One thing it does is it tells it that it should go away. When you touch it, it should go away. So you could use this for gold or treasure or, picking up a weapon or scroll or whatever, or something like a key, because there's also a counter. And if it sees any of those objects, those pickup lock objects, it will run the script to get rid of that and make it into a walkable tile, just like with the monster, what happened when I kill all the monsters. So all I have to do besides that is set a bounding box and hit close. And I'm going to make I'm going to say I saved it. Okay. And you know what? I saved it and I didn't click on it. So now watch this. A lot of the object details I just made, they're gone. So that's what I was talking about before, where you have to click on it while you're updating. I saved it and then I didn't click on it. So now let me do those again. Pick up, power up, and there we go. And now I don't have the option to save. It's all updated. I'm gonna make a monster group. That was a good way to show that. I'm glad that mistake happened. And now I can go to keys, call the monster group keys. I'm going to open up this second room I made, and I'm going to tell it that on the day monsters, I want to use keys. And I want to use that key sub palette, and I can place one of them in that room. All right, so now when I test this, the one thing that it does, like I was saying, is it's going to get rid of those objects that look for if there are any pickup objects in the room. So if I go up here, are there any pickup objects in the room? Yep. So those are still there, and I can't go through them. They're solid. But now if I get the key, bam, they go away, and it's walkable. That is also huge, but there's one thing that makes it even bigger than that I can see you using in a million different ways. The other thing that it does is it changes whatever screen type you have here from normal to triggered. So the next time the screen loads and forever after, it's going to be triggered. And why that's really great is if I look at normal, I can see there's a key here. If I look at triggered, there's no key here. There's no pickup objects here. So what's going to happen to this? It's going to go away. This is a way to create a permanent effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set this to an arbitrary screen to show 8. Okay, so this is screen type 8. So all of the screen type 8s in the entire game are going to flip to triggered if I get this key and this door goes away. And I'll show you, one of the reasons that's cool is this. Beat these monsters. Come here. Oh, you little bastard. Ah, killed me. Beat these monsters. Go up here. I get that key and look at that. And if I go off the screen and I come back on, it's still gone because it's now loading the triggered, which was no monsters. Since there was no pickups, the door's not there. So that's really cool. But, I can also do something else that's really cool. What if I go to this screen and I also set it to screen type 8? Now it's not only going to change this screen to triggered, it's going to change this screen to triggered. And what's on this screen when it's triggered? Right now, nothing, no monsters. So what's going to happen to this wall? It's going to go away as well. So this is one use of this. And let me show you that. So if I beat these monsters, if I can, if they'll let me, and I come up here and I collect the key, this and any other screen in the game that's set to 8 just changed, and now that barrier is gone. Or another option, and this is even cooler, maybe I want this area to get harder. And remember when I made these stone monsters and I said, you know what, I'm going to make them shoot at you, and I'm not even going to make them monsters. The monster lock object counts the number of monsters. Since these aren't registering as monsters, it won't count them. So if I go to overworld and I were to say, go to my screen info and go to day monsters is how I set these guys up. What if I go to day triggered monsters? And instead of using the bug group, I use the bug stone group. And I make sure that I set it to monster stone. I can't remember. I think it was this top one that I used. And I hit OK. And I go to triggered and I place these statues here. Now, what I'll end up getting, instead of there being nothing there when it's on its triggered state, there'll be harder monsters there on its trigger state. And because they're technically not monsters, right? They don't observe me when I attack them, but they're also not counted against the monster count. I get this key and I go back and my gateway's gone, but I still have these hard monsters in there that are shooting at me. So that's a cool little trick that you can use. And the other ones didn't shoot at me, honestly, because their projectile was created and it was colliding with solid objects. I have a feeling that's what was going on. So that's why these two didn't fire. And if I just moved them out of their way, or if I fixed the position of origin for where those projectiles are being created, that would fix that. And that's coming down the line. Something that we're adding. It's already in our queue of things to do. But anyway, so that is all the cool new stuff. And what I really want you to do is I want you to think about some of these new features that are here, some of these new engine features. First of all, the things that are fixed that, will allow you to do the things that you were supposed to be able to do in the first place, but also these new ideas. Like, this doesn't have to be a lock. What could this be? This doesn't have to be a monster wall. What could this be? Maybe it's a giant sleeping dragon, and and all the pieces of the dragon are monster locks. So when you defeat the baby dragon or shoot up his eggs or whatever, he disappears, or I don't know. You guys come up with clever things. They're monsters are stationary torches, and when you shoot the torches go away, and when they're both gone, the magical barrier goes away, or whatever. I don't know. You guys be creative. I just want to see what you guys can do that I haven't even thought of using these sort of tricks and techniques. So thanks so much for watching. Hopefully this is the 7th time I've recorded this, and the computer's crashed each time. Let's hope that it doesn't when I press the stop button. Thank you guys so much. I look forward to seeing what you come up with this, and I look forward to the next update probably in 2 weeks from now.